Fred was one of our leading project managers and facilitators at Armstrong World Industries. He invited me to help him facilitate a cost reduction session in Europe. Now, in the United States, we prepared for many weeks. We knew if done well, we could identify hundreds of actionable projects as well as millions of dollars of opportunity for the company. I knew that this was a great opportunity and assignment for me because I could learn so much from Fred about facilitation and how he prepared and project managed these complex situations. And we flew over to Europe and we toured the prior weekend before the session. Fred was one of our leading project managers and facilitators at Armstrong World Industries, and he invited me to co-facilitate a cost reduction session with him in Europe. Now, I knew this would be a great experience for me because I could learn so much from Fred about facilitation techniques and how he prepared for these complex sessions. Now, we prepared for many weeks. We knew, if done well, we could identify many millions of dollars of opportunities for the company, as well as safety and customer service and quality improvements. Now, we arrived in Europe the weekend before the session, so Fred was quite the tourist, and we traveled and saw many interesting sites. Now, the day before the session, we went to the corporate office and prepared the meeting space and talked about the agenda for the session. Now, Fred gave me some assignments. They were kind of less critical areas of the session, but I totally understood that he wanted to take the more critical areas, such as the idea generation, brainstorming, and prioritization. Now, about an hour or so into the brainstorming, you could tell the room and Fred were getting a bit tired. So ideas weren't coming as fast as they had early on. And so I called a break and asked Fred if he would mind if I would step in and maybe mix things up a little bit for the room. Fred agreed, and so I was able to draw out a few more ideas out of the group, maybe a dozen or so. So nothing too extreme. Now, we got to lunch with hundreds of ideas, and now it was time to prioritize them. So Fred and I had a little conversation about how he was going to prioritize these many, many ideas. His idea was to use a prioritization matrix, basically comparing one idea to the rest of them to say which ones are the most important, because the most important ideas were going to be shaped or formed into concept sheets that project teams could then take forward in the coming months or years. So the idea of comparisons, A versus B versus C versus D versus E, it seemed logical, but it also seemed like it's going to take a lot of time. Now, I suggested what I thought was a simpler and faster approach, but Fred was pretty firm that he wanted to at least start prioritization his way. So after lunch, we started the prioritization. We picked a project, and we wanted to compare it to all the other ideas. About 30 or 45 minutes in, it looked like this could take the rest of the day and maybe many more days. So we weren't really getting very far. The team seemed a little tired already and disengaged. So we called a break and we had a discussion, Fred and I, about how might we speed this up but still get great results. So on the fly, I came up with what I thought might be a good alternative, and I called it multi-voting with criteria. So multi-voting is when you have a great list of items, a great big list of items, and you say to a team, hey, pick your 5 favorites, and that's what you should vote on. And then each team member has 5 votes, and then in the end, you get kind of a consensus of what they believe is the prioritization or the highest priority work to be taking on. But that doesn't seem all that scientific, so adding criteria makes it a lot more meaningful, because criteria might be it adds or saves the most cost, it reduces the most safety risk, it adds the most quality, it helps the customer the most. Now, so Fred agreed to let me try this approach as long as we got feedback from the group that was positive and that they were okay, then we would continue on this path. Otherwise, we'd come up with another way. So what was interesting was when we introduced multi-voting with criteria, the team seemed really interested and they actually added a criteria of their own, which shows that they were kind of owning the approach and the output. Now we got through the big list of ideas quickly and the feedback was quite positive. So over the years, I've used this approach many times. It's my go-to, but I've refined it in such a way that the team is very clear on how critical the criteria is, and it's not just throw darts at the wall to pick your favorite projects. Um, what I've found by using this style of approach is that we can skinny down literally hundreds of ideas down to the top 5 to 10 in probably 15 minutes or less. Now, how does it compare to other prioritization approaches? Well, it is quick, but there is some science and there's also some psychology to it. And when used well, my belief is it gets you the same results as a lot more complex and slower approaches do. I believe consider multi-voting with criteria and you will get to the right answer more quickly than you could have imagined.
I hope you enjoyed this story, gained some insight, and learned something you can use. You'll find many more Kaizen stories on my website, www.pi-partners.com. If you'd like help growing your profits through sustained process improvement, scan the QR code on the screen for a free consultation, and let's start our journey together.